Destiny's Lab, a Zulu Kane. You listen to what they say, cause you wanna have a way to escape. You wanna be in control of your fate. Just another one gone oblivious. You remain oblivious to all the consequences and all the obvious problems here. Look at you fooling around with the mythicism and philosophy's hypocrisy has messed up your vision. Now blindly you see no problems with Buddhism and Hinduism. You think every God's inside. I hope that you listen now. The Bible says the spiritual guides are just demons. Look at Acts 16:16 and read and you'll see the fortune teller and the demons embedded deep within the body. She could do mysterious things. I'ma tell you this, hopefully it's not too confusing. It's not some kind of enlightenment. It's definitely not improvement. It was only the demons inside doing those amazing things. Just look at Revelation 16:14. Working these miracles ain't hard for demons to do. They even got yoga instructors and manifesting miracles. But they keep on deceiving, saying there's not a lot of parts of the Bible you should believe in. You listen to what they say, cause you wanna have a way to escape. You wanna be in control of your fate. Just another one gone oblivious.
Why do you turn to spirits that peep and mutter, these wizards, the spirits of the dead?
These palm reading phonies are full of baloney. Consulting with psychics is just wasting money. There's obvious, scary, and serious side effects. Don't mess with mediums, don't be oblivious. Consequences could be tragic to mess with black magic and witchcraft. The fact is that Satan is crafty. He laughs at our tragedy. Sadly, the enemy's strategy actually feeds on our misery. Physically, mentally, spiritually, wearing us down till eventually you'll do most anything. Conjuring demons with Ouija boards. What you're exploring is horrible. Holding your soul, you're ignoring your conscience. How can you afford being lost in these perilous times without knowing that possibly you could be following forces of darkness and living oblivious?
You listen to what they say, cause you wanna have a way to escape. You wanna be in control of your fate. Just another one gone oblivious. You would think with all these prophecies coming to pass that a light bulb would light up over your head.
This new age lie is an ancient wolf in sheep's clothing, remolding itself with cults and mind probing, exposing itself, opposing, revolting, imposing its will on souls that he's holding, assaulting the mind and soul and controlling, preparing the blind. The times are unfolding, his followers frolic away false messiahs, believing in reincarnation and karma. This antichrist mimic, a copycat criminal, trickster of man, spewing words like a minister, sinister peacemaker, darkest of dictators, posed as a savior with goodwill behavior, later exposed as a liar and hater, invader of nature, the ultimate traitor, this arrogant jealousy, pride fornicator, who thinks he is greater than God the Creator.
You listen to what they say, cause you wanna have a way to escape. You wanna be in control of your fate. Just another one gone oblivious.
Aunt Jane wasn't too bright when she was alive, but now that she's on the other side, she seems to be a fountainhead of wisdom. That doesn't make too much sense.
Hey guys, welcome. I forgot to change the title. It said just now the bigger they are, the harder they fall, but that's not what we're doing tonight. We're doing bugging out. So sorry about that, but I'll make sure I fix that problem next week. Welcome, Mr. NPC 3.14.
Sebastula, it's nice to be here with you all.
Yes,
Thank you
Shabbat
for your
Shalom.
time.
We were just talking, I want to let everybody know that we were just talking about the snake venom thing, and we have to be super careful. So we may not be able to talk much about it. I kind of want to, but it's going to be hard because there's so much involved. Repeating going on. What does that mean?
I'm sorry.
Oh, they said I'm echoing or something.
Oh, do you have the stream going at the same time?
It's muted.
Do you have the stream
Yeah, I don't know where to
going
go.
That could be the only explanation that I can think of, is that it's playing simultaneously.
We're doing bugging out, so sorry about that, but I'll make sure I fix that. That's not happening on my end. I went back and played the video just now, and it's not echoing and repeating through my video, so I'm not sure. Jackie, I'm going to check on the Facebook. Let's see, hang on.
Yeah, I got headphones
Through
on,
my
so I
video,
don't
so
think
I'm
it's
not
me.
sure. Jackie, I'm going to check on. Yeah, there's no echo coming through my videos. So, yeah.
Sophia says it sounds okay.
Hey, good to see Emily. Haven't seen you in a while. Emily.
Indeed. Many meows,
Good to see
folks.
everybody.
Jackie, Emily. So, you were talking about the snake stuff.
Yes, I would want to say that, well, one thing I was saying to you is my warning to people is, one, the division that this is already causing, because people are massively, massively unhappy if you disagree with everything this guy says about snake venom being in the water. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's some Stu Peters interview with a chiropractor, and it's called Watch the Water, which is a direct Q quote. So that's also another concern of mine, and how viral and how quickly viral it went is another concern of mine. But you actually spent time watching them and watching him and listening to him. And what I would say is one thing that a friend of mine who really has watched a lot of his stuff has said that that she doesn't understand the whole it being in the water because so many people don't drink city water, but also people who, let's say it's real, let's say COVID's a real thing and you can actually get sick by it, and it is this peptide or whatever, right? Let's say that's the case. Well, people, if they're drinking out of the same water, should get it back to back, like simultaneously. And she was saying how her and her husband were very far apart in illness. And I know other people who say, well, I caught it in, I mean, what kind of pandemic is this? I caught it in January. My husband got sick in March, or I didn't get it for 18 months into this. And, so that's what I'm hearing more of, which tells me it's not some peptide in the water that looks like, venom, but also people are taking this and running to really weird places with it, going, oh my gosh, there's been venom in the medicines for a long time. Yes, there's venom in that they use, there's for anticoagulant for strokes and sometimes heart attack, but certainly for massive strokes and things. That's one of the first things they'll give people when they come into the ER, because it actually is an anticoagulant. So how is it causing these supposed symptoms like coagulant and strokes and things when it's an anticoagulant, and it breaks up, and it actually, helps those people by taking the clot out. And then there's also was a study from ASU saying that there's a peptide that does exist in the body that can look like snake venom, but not cobra. There wasn't specifically cobra, but they're actually using it to treat some COVID symptoms. So here's the thing: is it's not coming together. And yes, one of the final warnings I would give is Stu Peters guy is he sensationalizes everything. He puts music to it to try to make it sound, get you emotional. Jackie says food and drinks can be made from that water, but that's the thing is that why wouldn't people get sick at the same time then? If their food and drinks were made from the water that's in the tap, they should be getting sick at the same time. So anyway, I think it's garbage. I literally think it's full out garbage. That's how I feel about it, but you can say what you want, NBC.
Well, I don't know much about these people, so I can't make too many claims, but he's got a wiki page here on him. just kind of shows who he's associated with, and he kind of does come from some of the same circles that we've heard about other sensational folks. So it's possible that they could just be trying to make certain populations of folks look crazy, because
that's exactly what it's doing.
At the end of this road, it's we know that they use discrediting techniques and such. So I think at the end of this, they just really want to make Christians look crazy at some point. And besides, not that this is real, but how many things have we heard that didn't become real, as they kind of been joking about it's a conspiracy theory one day, and then a few days later or a month or two later it's then truth. So what we do know is that city municipal water isn't very much healthy anyway, because they add fluoride, chlorine, to kill. So it's very sterile, and of course we want our water to be sterile, right? But it's sterile in a bad way, like dead water is almost how I would characterize it. Like if you were to microwave water, no doubt it's sterile and clean, but you try to water a plant with that and then it doesn't grow. So obviously it doesn't necessarily do that when it comes out of the tap. I'm just saying that everything we do to it takes away from what it was. So whether that's stripping the minerals out of it that might be there. For instance, I have well water, and there's naturally occurring sulfur in it. Well, most people wouldn't like that. And most people that are guests to this house the first time or two or several times, they don't like the well water, but I don't even notice it. But some people have iron and different other things. But the city municipal water has to abide by some standard. And so suddenly, instead of having wells, then you're all sharing from a well. So I can see why it would be an attractive, conspiracy of sorts, because something could easily be added to the water. But even on that scale, all cities are kind of apart. There's not like a national water system. So, I don't know. I think if this were even to be a grain of truth involved, it would seem like it would only be in larger cities, probably, where a lot of people could be affected or something like that. But I don't know enough about the theory in general to make too many claims about it. But watch the water, and then with this caduceus in it, kind of almost makes you think. We should be watching the water already because they're full of pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of other reasons to be watching the water as it is. So I don't, but there's a documentary apparently associated with this. Well, here's something here. Oops, I didn't mean to click it. But we'll see shortly what it says. Give me a second here. So, whether it's medications that have been flushed, hormonal type things, there's a lot of different things that are probably in the water already. So I would just encourage folks to, dig a well. How many stories in the Bible are there of wells? They're very significant for a reason, and it is a way to control people, in a sense, because one of the attractive things about living in the city are having access to these amenities. I remember whenever I lived out in the country with my mother long ago, we had to import our water in a cistern. We had to go get it in town and bring it. And even then, we were getting city water. So there are some interesting points, I guess, as far as how you would deal with governing humans. Water is pretty important.
Yeah, and I would agree.
I could drone on and on about water, I guess.
Well, I was going to say I agree, but that's the other thing is I tried to explain to people that I put a post up on Facebook that angered a lot of people, and you could say it's how I said it, but I could have said it in a nice way. I could have said, I am concerned. That was my point, actually. I was trying to make the point of it didn't matter how I said it, because people got mad when I went against Carrie Madej. They argued with me about that. So I posted about that if you really think this venom is in the water, and you're a dummy. That's what I said. And people they flew off the handle. but they flew off the handle in a way. They said, "Are you a doctor? Are you a scientist?" And then I said, "Okay, no, but I'm not a biologist, so can I tell you what a woman is?" I mean, that's the same. They're using the same logic. That's the bigger problem. Forget the video, forget the water. We already know it's poison, but they would the way they were saying the same thing as people on the left. If I'm not a doctor, and by the way, I am practically a doctor. So when I said that, well, yeah, I kind of am a doctor. Oh, no, you're not. Right. And so then I'm getting torn apart for not being a doctor or a scientist, and I need to prove my research. And then I'm like, are these people doctors and scientists, but yet they believe it? That's where I'm saying the real problem is how people are reacting to people who don't agree with it. Whether I aggressively disagree or whether I non-aggressively disagree and try to actually, and David Lewis brings up water filters. Totally. Do the water filters filter it out or don't they? I mean, we could go on and on. We could go on and talk about that. I think the bigger problem is the anger that is coming from people who disagree that I think it's dumb if you think it's in the water. So I could have said, hey guys, I'm really concerned for you. And as a PA, as a physician assistant for 10 years, and a science major, this is what I think. And they would have told me the same thing. What do you know? You didn't watch the whole thing. You need to watch the whole thing before you can have a single opinion. And I did that with Carrie Madej. I did that with her videos. And I said, you guys, this is garbage. And people were like, no. So it doesn't matter if I watch the whole thing or not. It doesn't matter if I'm a doctor or a scientist or not. People don't like when you go against their belief system, and they're holding on to it steadfast. And that's the problem, is that people cannot handle the disagreement at all.
Well, I totally understand, and like you mentioned earlier, it's still a lot of division. Here it says this drop is totally context-free, meaning it could be about, and there's a bit of a glare on the screen again, sorry. It could be about, for me, my window is catching the setting sun. It may be about anything, so believers can make it about anything. So yeah, that's kind of the thing, is like it's almost like those daily horoscopes where they're so general that they could kind of fit to anything. If they were more specific, they'd be easier to disprove, right? So yeah, there we go. So maybe this one will help. You were kind of, sorry, I'm not really meaning to click these, I'm sorry. It's just really sensitive for some reason. So anyway, did you want to move on to the other stuff? Do you have any announcements to make?
I would just say I put up a recent video on this new crypto I'm doing, you guys. It's insane. I'm making $200 a day now in just a month. And I was only making like $70 to start. Started with $2,500. I did put another $1,300 in. I'm at almost $7,000 in a month. So I think you guys should watch that video, and I will help you more. I need to make another video that kind of follows up and kind of gives you guys more updated stuff. But it's kind of it's all I'm doing is pushing a button, and I actually don't have to push the button anymore. I got a program running that does it for me. Every 2 hours and 13 minutes, I make $20. And it increases all the time. When I started, it was about $10, and then it went up to, every 2 hours and 13 minutes, and it went up to about, and I had to remember to do it though. So I wasn't getting the money every 2 hours and 13 minutes. And yes, you can cash out. Yes, I have articles on how legit of a company it is. It's been around since 2019, all that stuff. So anyway, just go check out that video. Keep an eye out, because it's seriously a no-brainer. I'm making over $200 a day, but the more money you put in, the more you make. So that's my only announcement. We can get into the Passover stuff.
Oh, I found a quote here that you might have expressed how you felt about the matter.
Yeah, it says, well, I, for one, feel like I lost 35 IQ points just finding out why Watch the Water is trending. Yeah.
But again, there's other reasons to be concerned about the water, so regardless of what all is going on there,
that's right.
Just know that there's a lot of contaminants in it. Fluoride's not good for your pineal gland, for instance. It makes you less spiritually sensitive. There's all the other medications folks are taking. I mean, even just driving on the highway nowadays, you got to wonder what everybody's on, and that's in the water. So
yes, I agree. And the air. We know it's in the air too. And that's the other thing, is people assume that I suddenly didn't believe in chemtrails and poison water because I didn't believe in this one. So we don't have two choices, everybody. We've got more than two choices. It doesn't mean if you're not right, you're left, and if you're not left, you're right. So we have more than just the two choices. You don't have to believe in snake venom in the water to not be able to know that there's chemtrails in poison water.
Could you maybe look into this? Margene Roman says she saw an article a few weeks back about how they were in the process of taking pythons from the Everglades in order to use them in the manufacture of Pokemon.
That was from an Arizona State University study.
Interesting.
And Paul Romano covers it on his channel. I think he calls it Apocalypse now. Anyway, he's not a Christian. He's a New Ager, but he does cover some of these subjects pretty thoroughly. And yes, you can look up the ASU experiment, but they're talking about venom. I don't know about pythons. So this could be a different one. Not sure, Margene.
Well, and I think sometimes this kind of thing occurs where, for instance, my name is Joshua, but for years, and people still do it today, they call me Josh, even after I tell them my name. So I think it's just human nature that we oftentimes consolidate, abbreviate, associate, and that's like kind of like how the telephone game works. By the time the message gets around to the other person on the other end, it's changed based on what somebody's associations are, what they really heard, what they remember, what they're retelling, So it's kind of an interesting thing. We really participate in a meme a meme game all day long throughout our lives, just being social creatures. So, some of these things maybe combine with other things. And then I think that's used to their advantage too. Like they want to make it sound like we're crazy, so we just get associated with whatever, So it's just something that is basic and fundamental about how humans operate. And I think that the controllers, as it were, know how to manipulate us. So that's a possibility too. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the meme potential there. And then also we were talking about the date for Passover, how Jewish calendar and Gregorian calendar it's today, yesterday and today, and for the next 6 days, I think. And then on the Greek Orthodox calendar, it is next Friday and Saturday. Well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that they go by the Julian calendar, which was retired and when they adopted the Gregorian calendar. So I thought it might be worthwhile to just take a look at this real quick, and we can read this. So, let me share these links. Also, I like bushcraft type stuff, like camping and whatnot. And so one good thing to talk about would maybe be how to create a water filter when you're outdoors. You could use charcoal, sand, certain types of gravel, but you want to have layers of it, and you want the charcoal to be at the bottom, and the charcoal helps to absorb contaminants. All the other things are physical barriers to aid in the filtration of the water. Now, of course, you'd still want to boil the water after you filtered it, but at least that way you could get, quote, clean drinking water. So just because we were talking about all that, I figured it'd be worthwhile to mention that. All right, so this article is going to tell us a little more about the difference between the two calendars. The Julian calendar, proposed by Julius Caesar and AUC, not sure what that is, Ab Urbe Condita, or Anno Urbis Condite, abbreviated as AUC or AVC, express a date in years since 753 BC, the traditional founding of Rome. Interesting. It is an expression used in antiquity by classical historians to refer to a given year in ancient Rome, in reference to the traditional year of the foundation of Rome. Okay, so this would equate, it's 708 in that regard, would equate to 46 BC. This was a reform of the Roman calendar. It took effect on January 1st, 709 AUC, which is 45 BC, by edict. And this is a mandate. An edict is a decree or an announcement of a law, just like the jabby jab Pokemon snake bite stuff, often associated with monarchism like a king, but it can be under any official authority, such as the church, for instance. Synonyms include dictum and pronouncement. These are the types of things we're watching for today. These were also given to the Hebrews while they were enslaved and working. There was edict after edict issued, making their labor harder and more intense. They didn't have a day off, for instance. So today when we talk about the Passover, we'll be kind of talking about why that's important today. It continues here by saying it was designed with the aid of the Greek mathematicians and astronomers such as Sosigenes of Alexandria. Not sure who that is. It says here he was a Greek astronomer from Ptolemaic Egypt, who, according to Roman historian Pliny the Elder, was consulted by Julius Caesar for the definition of the Julian calendar. This year format existed prior to its renaming and was already in use by astronomers. This calendar became the predominant calendar in the Roman Empire and subsequently most of the Western world for more than 1600 years until 1582, when Pope Gregory promulgated a minor modification to reduce the average length of the year from 365 and a quarter days to 365.2425 days, a little short of a quarter there, and thus corrected the Julian calendar's drift against the solar year. Excuse me, I keep having to move around to avoid this light that's on the screen. Okay, so that part right there is really important. So it says here, thus corrected the Julian calendar's drift against the solar year. So before we went live, Aaron and I were talking about how there was this difference here of 2 weeks between the two dates. So if we were still on this Julian calendar, we'd be 2 weeks away from the real date. And that kind of thing is really significant because, we're supposed to begin the month of Nisan, for instance, when we see the light of the first light of the moon after the spring equinox. So 3/21 is the spring equinox. So the very next light of the moon would form these two, crescents, the two horns of the moon. And of course, that's when the shofar would be blown by the two witnesses, one from this tribe and then one from another. And that's when the month began. So the Hebrew calendar is independent on its own, but it jives more with the Gregorian calendar here. Now, I can't remember where it is in the Bible necessarily, but or if it's maybe an extra canonical text, but there is something I've read about how our feast days would eventually not be on the correct days anyway, and so to the Lord they were unclean anyhow. So it kind of made me think about this kind of thing right here, is where the way we keep time, because the world maybe wants to do it a different way, over time we would drift from the original days to the point where we're not even keeping them on the proper day, no matter how well we think it is. It's like, because it's just simply been lost. So this is food for thought in that regard. There are other calendars like the Enochian calendar that I can't recall how close the date is to either of these, but that's the only other one that I can really think of. And the Ethiopian calendar, I think, is another. So it would be worthwhile to compare those and see what the similarities are and how they determine the date. And this number right here comes into play. So basically, this is where you get into, if you divided every month up evenly, you'd basically have, 360 days. So in any case, each time you try to divide it up, you're going to have like a span of a week almost. So I'd say that's where this is coming from. And that's why we have a leap year too, where we have an extra day, is to try and catch up the calendar. So that just goes to show it's obviously not perfect. And over a long period of time, even the calendar we're on now would fall out of sync.
So do you think if we're not able to keep the feast days, what does that mean for those of us that are trying to keep the feast days, you think?
Well, I think it's better to try than not to try at all. Again, as long as you're having as long as your month starts the first moon after the spring equinox, which is kind of easy to determine, then, I mean, as long as that, but if that gets moved too far, then yeah, it could even be an issue there. Like for instance, if we were actually starting spring and closer to like January or something like that, or a month up, it would be maybe a concern then. But I think, because it's generally agreed upon when spring is, because it's right after winter, it's kind of easier to determine. So personally, I'd say just try to do it how the Bible tells us to do it, and that's to observe those that crescent on the moon right after the spring equinox. So that's how I would suggest doing it. And as far as keeping the feast, it's very difficult unless you've been born into it and you're raised to do it properly. It's very, very difficult. And we'll talk more about the Passover ritual here in a minute. But for instance, we would have had to clean our house, make sure we had no yeast-containing products. And if you did, you had to dispose of them. And it says if you even eat yeast after Passover begins, that you're cut off from Israel. So, something like that can be kind of important if you're like, well, when's it begin? Like, were you supposed to stop eating it 2 days ago? Like we'll read in the Chabad.org, the Jewish folks say that 2 days ago is when you're supposed to stop. But they even go so granular as to say by noon that day. So, that's another extra detail that we'll get into. But, that kind of thing can kind of seem really important. So it is, I wouldn't let it stress you out, but, that's kind of why it's the importance of fellowship and having witnesses is, I would worry more about it if I was out in the middle of nowhere, because I wouldn't really know. But I think when we're in fellowship and we're sharing these stories, and even if we're on the wrong day, well, we'll eventually figure it out, I think, when the millennial reigns here.
I think also I was watching a good video today that said a big part of it is because we are Christ came and fulfilled the covenant. What we can still do this, but does it have to be on the exact day? Not necessarily, because like Jackie says, that's the old covenant. But you could still practice this. Obviously, it's better to practice on the holy days than the holidays. I was just telling Sophia, because she mentioned somebody doing an Easter egg hunt, that I tried to have have this conversation with my parents, because I'm like, it would be nice if we could celebrate these things, and there's similar times of year, just like Hanukkah's around Christmas, and I think we're doing the right thing, not doing it on pagan days and doing pagan traditions. Unfortunately, my parents did not want to hear it. Especially my dad. And but in my own house, we can do that. And there's a nice PDF I put up in the Discord server that you saw. It talks about how you can just do a Passover meal together and prayerful. And I don't know that we got to worry about unleavened bread in that time ourselves. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Well, I would encourage not to eat the leaven, just because the whole importance, there's an entire feast dedicated to it, and it's not just one day. It just so happens to coincide with Passover. But the importance of the unleavened bread is that they were, and here's another detail I don't hear talked about very often. I was reading in that Exodus 11 last night how you're supposed to be dressed and ready to go, like with your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand. You're not even sitting down. You're supposed to be like standing up, gathered around that lamb, consuming that lamb. And, that's I guess the whole idea is to fill your bellies full of that lamb, and there's not supposed to be anything of it left. And if there is anything left, that and the bones, which you're not allowed to break, are to be burned up in a fire. And then you eat unleavened bread. And I guess the point of that is that they were being instructed, be ready to leave. You're getting ready to bug out, essentially. And that's why we named the episode Bugging Out, because the whole theme of Passover, people talk about the rapture a lot, and that comes from the word harpazo, which is to be gathered as first fruits by the Lord, his strong right arm, harpazo. Destruction comes with the left hand, which that alone's enough. Imagine if destruction was his right hand and he saved with his left. Well, that left arm maybe wouldn't be strong enough to save from the utter destruction of the right hand. So instead, we're saved with the right hand to ensure that we're not utterly destroyed by the left hand. So I find these themes very interesting and powerful, and the whole gist of the unleavened bread is that they left so fast they had their kneading troughs bound up in their clothing and strapped to their back. And so they were already packed and ready to go. So they couldn't even eat leavened bread because the kneading troughs were packed away. So I know it might sound like, oh, we're getting into these details, they're not important or whatever, but at the same time, it's like, well, think of how that could translate to today. So imagine standing there eating the lamb with your bug out bag on your back and your boots on, and like you're ready to go. So a lot of times we talk about, oh, we got to flee Babylon, we got to be ready to flee, and well, that translates to the time of Passover, because that's when this was, quite frankly, this is when they were bugging out. And another reason we titled it Bugging Out is because in chapter 10 of Exodus, it's the plague of the locusts. So, that's immediately preceding the last plague, which as far as the Egyptians knew, that was kind of the last plague, the locusts. There's a conversation between Moses and God that takes place. He's like, well, I got one more plague for them. He's like, that's the plague of the firstborn. He says, I want you to go home, tell everybody to take the lamb in, and this is where he counts the days. And it's on that, I think, the 14th day, like you mentioned earlier, that they're supposed to take
The 10th day.
Excuse me, they take the lamb into the 10th, and then the 14th day is when they slay the lamb. So that act is when the destroyer went over the city and took the firstborn or first fruits of everybody that didn't have the lamb's blood above the door, on the sides and the top. And here's another interesting detail, is that Moses is told by the Lord that he will do this at midnight. So, we hear the phrase minutes to midnight. They're usually talking about the doomsday clock, right? Or even in like the iPet goat video, it's also minutes to midnight there. So it seems well known by some even that it is midnight. But that seems to be, the hour that the destroyer went over the last time during the Passover and the first Exodus. So I think that's a time to watch for. It's during the night watch too. So maybe when I've had a little more time to compare it, I would like to compare that, since Jesus' death on the cross was also during the Passover. I think it would be interesting to compare the actual hours. Or do you know which hour it was exactly? Because he was taken in the morning, I think, right?
I've seen some stuff about this, that he died at 4 in the afternoon, but it was I don't know. So I think he was taken in on Wednesday and died Wednesday or Thursday, because he rose. I've seen he rose on Saturday, and I've seen he rose on Sunday. So I don't know, but I don't know what hour he rose or anything like that.
Well, the triumphal day of entry, the Palm Sunday, it begins that week. So then it would be through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, that would make sense, I guess. So then Thursday, the Last Supper took place on Friday.
No, it would have had to take
Thursday,
place on
rather.
Wednesday. Because he
What
was
was that
in the
again?
tomb, he'd had to be Wednesday because he was in the tomb 3 full days and 3 full nights. So it can't be Friday to Sunday.
Okay. Well, anyhow, that's just something to look at, is the night watches and how that might coincide with midnight and with the Passover. I'm just wondering how those overlap, because he defeats death, which is what
Well,
passes
yeah.
over everything.
Right.
So
They had the Passover meal the night he is taken at midnight, I think. That's when they come and grab him. It's because all that happens in the middle of the night, which is why they had like people giving witness that weren't his real followers, because all those people were asleep. But the dinner was on the Passover night.
yeah, and he had to be taken down off the cross before the Sabbath began on Friday evening with nightfall, because that's why they didn't break his shins. So they came through to break the shins of the two thieves who were still alive, and then he was already dead, so they didn't have to break his shins. So again, that's another fulfillment of the Passover lamb, because the lamb's not allowed to have any broken bones. So kind of interesting to think about that. And then it would be midnight of that night is when the destroyer would come. So, I think it's interesting to consider also that in the second Passover, it's the blood of Christ that covers us and from the destroyer the second time. So that's an interesting theme. But anyway, I just wanted to share a little bit about this calendar, and it's a pretty long article, so I didn't want to read it all, but there's a lot to it, and it just gives you some food for thought and to consider what date it really is in the world, that is. But when we go to Exodus 11, it talks about these things, so we'll be able to see what God says about it.
I want to make a comment too, where a lot of people will say, "Oh, we're not Jews, so we don't have to do this stuff." Well, we're not, but it does say in the Bible to keep my commandments, and it does say in Exodus to remember the Passover for all time. And I can't remember exactly. You just read it probably.
All
last night, so-
generations.
yeah, for all generations. And so we don't, like I said, fine, maybe we shouldn't have leavened bread according to what you said, but at the same time, we shouldn't be celebrating the holidays. We should be trying more towards these holy days. And are we going to do it like the Jews do? Well, the Jews aren't the Hebrews either. The Jews of today are the synagogue of Satan anyway, so we're not trying
Some
to be
of
Jews.
them, specifically the Ukrainian ones, in my opinion.
Yeah, which look at the top of
We
your
can
page
get
right
into
there.
that if you like.
Look at the top of your page. It says, "Help Ukraine."
Oh, yeah. See, it's everywhere. You can't even get away from it. But anyway, there's a reason for that, too, that kind of become apparent to me. So it's hard to know what we're able to say and what not to say. So there is the symbol for the swastika. I'll just say it. So that is actually the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. And as they rotate in the sky around the North Star, they form that design. So really it is a symbol of the seasons changing. And that symbol was taken and used by a particular group of folks back in World War II. And, it's a sigil that demands power. And they actually flipped it and inverted it so that instead of giving power or energy, it was sucking it or taking it in. And so it's an interesting thing to look at. But what I would like to say about that is that's actually the two bears, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And there is the big bear and the little bear. Well, who is that? That's Russia and Ukraine. So, and you'll find this topic that we're talking about being a big deal right now, because these folks apparently have a government that has a lot of those folks in it. So, and if you find out, like, it might even say this here, this word. I'm trying to avoid saying certain words, but there's a certain word. I'll just spell it here in the chat. So that right there is when it's talking about the synagogue of Satan in Revelation. It says those who call themselves are Jews and are not are the synagogue of Satan. So if you read about where these folks come from, it's Ukraine, something called the Khazar Empire. So find it no coincidence that what's getting ready to happen is kind of focused there. I must say I never really paid much attention to that country in particular, but I started looking into it, and it's got some really interesting history. In fact, even though Russia is the big bear, it's the little bear, Ukraine. That's actually where Russia began. So I think that's a really interesting detail to consider. And if you look into that, you'll see that this word right here pops up quite often, and it's still popping up today. And so remember, Matthew 7:16 tells us that ye shall know them by their fruits. So we got to trace back the fruit to the root. And when you do that, you'll find this word a lot. And so anyway, it's just something to look at, the two bears in the sky. So, and remember, that's the breadbasket of Europe and Russia. So, when war begins there, it's going to create a lot of famine. So it could quite potentially be the red horse, the black horse, and of course all the biochemical labs that are there, happenstance, could make a nice pale horse with the pestilence and everything. Not to mention the first corona type horse is already all over the world. So now that didn't necessarily start there, but still yet. I'm getting off topic, so I want to get back on this earthquake thing here. Let's talking about Ukraine for now. Yeah, okay. Well, seems like the people in the chat already know what I'm talking about. So, okay. So here's the earthquake. It's just a sensitive topic. Okay, so this is a site that will show you all the most recent earthquakes. And if you will look at the map here, it gives you a little bit of an idea where that's occurring. We like to focus on the ones over Jerusalem, or under Jerusalem, I should say. And it doesn't look like there have been any lately. Last week we did focus on Jerusalem and looked at all the earthquakes for years past, and it seemed like they were all along a fault line that was along the Dead Sea. So, if you're really into eschatology, you might want to look into that. I'll just kind of show you where it was, and maybe you'll be able to share some details about it. But it was all right here, all the earthquakes from the past 20 years or so that we looked seem to be along this. Must be a fault right here. So we'll continue to visit this website each week just to share any updates, because birth pangs are related to earthquakes, and as we know with childbirth, there are more birth pangs the closer you get to a birth. And we also looked at the dates associated with the fulfillment of Revelation 12:1. That was the 9/23/2017 Revelation 12:1 sign. And they were really intense around that time. There was lots of them rapidly, which is how contractions are before birth. And then, of course, the crowning came around that short time after that. So it's food for thought. All right, let's go to the nighttime sky calendar. And of course, it's Passover, so we should have I think we have a full moon, right? It's a full moon tonight, right? Or was last night, tonight?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure every time it's Passover, it's a full moon, because it's so many days after the moon started. And I think that was done on purpose, which is another way to kind of confirm the date that it began. Is like, well, if it was a sliver when it first began, it should be a full moon whenever we have Passover.
The next full moon occurs Saturday, April 16th.
And that's kind of why I don't really agree with the folks having it next weekend, is because by next weekend it won't be a full moon anymore. So if I had to say one was more correct than the other, I'd say, well, whichever one has Passover last night and today would be the more correct one, because it's a full moon. Now, why do I say that? Well, if you're leaving in the dead of night, wouldn't you need some moonlight to navigate with, So I think it kind of just makes sense personally, because that way, whenever everybody's leaving, they got plenty of light to move, and they're not doing it under the oppressive sun, So I think it's interesting from that perspective. But here are the planets. All are visible right now except for Neptune and Uranus, and this again is above Jerusalem. Now this website will give you the rising times, best conditions for viewing, etc. And the night sky over top, we see Lynx and Cepheus, which last week it was Cassiopeia. Oh, and then look, here we are. Ursa Minor, that's the little bear. So the little bear is literally over top of Jerusalem right now. We were just talking about it. So, and then here's your big bear. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor are both right over top of Israel right now. What do you know? So, anyway, the two bears. Okay, so let's move on. And here is the Chabad.org calendar, and we're on the 15th of Nisan, 5782, which is April 16th. And we're going to read a little bit here about Jewish history. These are some of the things that have happened on this day in the past. The covenant between the parts, 1743 BCE. On the 15th of Nisan of the year 2018, from creation 1743 BCE, God forged a special covenant with Abraham in which the destiny of the Jewish people was foretold. The Holy Land was bequeathed to them as their eternal heritage, but they would have to experience galut, which is exile and persecution. Quote, he said to Abram, know surely that your descendants shall be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will be enslaved to them, and they will afflict them 400 years, and afterwards they shall come out with great wealth. And when the sun went down, it was dark. Behold, a smoking furnace and a burning torch, which passed between those pieces. On that day God made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your seed I have given these lands, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. Genesis 15, 13 through 18. I think this is a bit paraphrased, because as I recall reading Exodus, I think it says 430. Yeah, I think it was 430 years, actually, not just 400. Okay. And Abraham battles 4 kings. Now, when we think about Abraham, I don't necessarily think about him as a military commander, so I forget about those things sometimes. But here, it's going to talk a little bit about this. When Lot was taken captive by the 4 kings who conquered the 5 cities of the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Venom, and Zoar, Abraham, aided by a small band of loyal servants, went to battle to rescue his nephew. The night divided for them, for him and his servants, and they defeated them, pursuing them to Hovah, which is to the left of Damascus. And he recovered all the property. Also his kinsman Lot and his property were recovered, and also the women and the people. Genesis 14, 15 through 16. The night divided. Interesting. Well, I don't know what that says, but I'll go ahead and share that down here, because that sounds like some type of miracle. Okay. Angels visit Abraham, 1714 BCE. On the third day following his circumcision at age 99, three angels visited Abraham. Raphael healed him, and Michael informed Abraham and Sarah that in exactly 1 year, a son would be born to them. The third angel, Gabriel, proceeded to Sodom to destroy the wicked city. Interesting. You don't always necessarily think of Gabriel as being a destructive angel, but here we see that that's what he did. He used sulfur, raining sulfur. Isaac, born 1713 BCE. God remembered Sarah, and he had said, and God did to Sarah as he had spoken. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah declared, God has made laughter for me, so that all that hear will laugh. Yitzchak, with me. That must be the word for laughter. Genesis 21, 1 through 6. Interesting. So this was also on this day. Jacob wrestles with the angel, 1556 BCE, and Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he could not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip became dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he, the angel, said, Let me go, for dawn is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you have blessed me. So he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Your name shall be no more Jacob, but Israel. For you have contended with God and with men and have prevailed. Genesis 32, 25 to 29. It was the eve of Nisan 15. I didn't ever know that. So this basically had happened on Passover. As we know, Jacob refers to heel catcher because he was the second born after Esau, but grabbing his heel, he came out second. So that's where the name Jacob comes from. In Israel, I think refers to this, having contended with God and men and prevailed, I think is the name translation for this. But he named that spot Peniel, where the wrestling with the angel had occurred. So I always found that very interesting as well.
Spelled like pineal gland?
Basically, yeah. It depends on which translation you look at, but it's every variation it dances around it. Some are spelled the same, some are spelled slightly different. But what it really translates to is I have seen God face to face, and I have lived, or I have been preserved, or something to that effect. So really interesting, which we know that the destroyer is who visited around that time. So it's as if he wrestled the destroyer. I'm not so sure it named the angel, did it?
In fact, some people think it's an angel, and some people think it's Jesus, and I guess it's arguable. I don't know.
Okay, the next morning Jacob confronted Esau in the flesh. Esau, who had come with a band of armed men with the intention to kill his brother, ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Esau invited Jacob to join him in his mountain kingdom of Seir, but Jacob replied, Please let my lord go on ahead before his servant, and I will lead on slowly according to the pace of the cattle that goes before me and the children, until I come to my lord to Seir, a promise yet to be fulfilled. Interesting. Moses in the burning bush, also at this time, it says. On the 15th of Nisan of the year 2447 from creation, 1314 BCE, exactly 1 year before the Exodus, Moses was shepherding the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro, at the foot of Mount Sinai, when God appeared to him in a thorn bush that burned with fire, but was not consumed, and instructed him to return to Egypt, come before Pharaoh, and demand in the name of God, let my people go, so that they may serve me. For 7 days and 7 nights Moses argued with God, pleading that he is the wrong person for the job, before accepting the mission to redeem the people of Israel and bring them to Sinai. This right here is a lot like that Jonah story with him being sent to Nineveh. He didn't want to do that either. And eventually he was made to do it. And so in that way, it's very similar to this. Also, Passover is 7 days long. So if this happened in the same day, then he also resisted for the same amount of time as the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So coincides with the leading out of spiritual captivity. That's why I like this website, because it'd be hard to make these connections on your own without knowing ahead of time, like, oh, okay, this is the same day. It'd take a lot of study to make those connections, I think. So, and there's not normally this many. This just happens to be a very popular day. Normally there's like one or maybe two. And of course we have but you'll notice here the years are all different. So again, this is 1 year before the Exodus. So the very next entry here is the Exodus, 1313 BCE. At the stroke of midnight, so again, there it is. At the stroke of midnight of Nisan 15 of the year 2448 from creation 1313 BCE, 210 years after Jacob settled in Egypt, and 430 years after the covenant between the parts, God visited the last of the 10 plagues on the Egyptians, killing all of their firstborn. Earlier that evening, the children of Israel conducted the first Seder of history, eating the roasted meat of the Passover offering with matzot and bitter herbs, and sprinkling the blood of the sacrifice on their doorposts as sign that God will pass over their homes when inflicting the plague upon the Egyptians. Pharaoh's resistance to free them was broken. Again, the 10th plague was the locust to precede this. So this is when he finally was like, okay, get out of here. And it says here, and he virtually chased his former slaves out of their land. Several million souls, 600,000 adult males, plus the women and children, and a large mixed multitude of non-Hebrews who joined them, left Egypt on that day and began the 50-day trek to Sinai and their birth as God's chosen people. So this is a Purim type relationship here. Queen Vashti executed 366 BCE on the 7th day of his royal feast. Again, we see this 7 thing. Only this would have been 7 days prior to now instead of 7 days after. So on the 7th day of his royal feast, King Ahasuerus demanded that Queen Vashti appear unclothed to display her beauty before all the attending guests. When Vashti refused his obscene request, the king had her executed. Her ignominious death on Shabbat was divine retribution for her penchant to force Jewish girls to work on Shabbat, and paved the way for Esther to become queen and save the Jewish nation from Haman's plot. Man. Daniel in the lion's den, 372 BCE. Daniel was cast into the den of hungry lions by Darius I of Persia for violating a royal edict that no man may pray to any god save the king for 30 days. Miraculously, the lions did not touch him, and he emerged from the den unscathed. Daniel 6:5-29. It's remarkable that all these things happen around the same time. Again, remember, Daniel's name means judgment by God, or judgment of God. And a lion is also known as Ari, and the name Ariel would refer to judgment of God, the same as Daniel. So I've always found those two things very interesting. Okay, so that was this date in time in the past. Now we're to laws and customs. So this is the Passover Torah readings. There's the prayer for dew. The month of Nisan marks the end of the season of rains in the Holy Land, beginning with the Musaf prayer of the first day of the Passover. We omit the passage in our prayers praising God's greatness as a provider of rain, substituting it with the words Mored Hatah, who brings down dew. And then down here it says they begin the Omer count tonight. So this is the first one, and Pentecost is the culmination of this count, which Pentecost means 50 count. So this would be the first count leading up to the 50 count. And it says here, and you shall count for yourselves from the morrow of Shabbat, from the day on which you bring the Omer offering, 7 complete weeks they shall be until the morrow of the 7th week, and you shall count 50 days. Leviticus 23:15. So again, 7 times 7 is 49. So 7 weeks is your 50 count, essentially, plus the 1 day. The morrow of Shabbat referred to in this verse is the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Passover, which begins tonight at nightfall. On this day, the Omer offering, which included matzahs baked from the new crop of barley harvested that very day, was brought into the Holy Temple. Now, this is very interesting to note because this is another way to know if the calendar is correct or not, is that if our date was off, the barley would either be not yet ripe or too ripe. So if it's not yet ripe, you can't even make the cake, the bread and stuff that you're supposed to make. So that's one other way to verify it. So, just letting people know about that. And then, so the first fruits are referring to barley. Okay, this was...
Remind me real quick, did you say that next week is the Jewish calendar or which calendar?
No, this week.
This week.
Today happens to line up. Yeah, the Gregorian and Jewish calendars line up. It's the Julian calendar that the Greek Orthodox use. That's the one that seems to be off a little bit. And the reason I say that is because, again, it begins with the moon. And since tonight is a full moon. Now, if we looked up at the moon and there was still a sliver missing, it'd be like, oh, okay, it's going to take another week for that thing to fill up. Well, then I would agree with that date a week from now. But the fact of the matter is it's full now. So, and then by the time they do it, there'll be a sliver missing. And so, I think that, and then if the barley was ripe this week already, then you would know, okay, well, the barley's ripe. So there would be 2 ways to kind of verify that.
And how all the practices and how long it lasts and everything, that's in Exodus 11 or 12? Or maybe 10 and 11?
Well, I think it might even start in the 10, but here in 11, it talks about how he's going to do one more plague. So he's telling the people to get prepared. So I may as well just go ahead and share this. Okie doke. So, the plague on the firstborn foretold. After the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go. Hence, when he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out altogether. Speaking now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, and in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. And Moses said, Thus saith the Lord, about midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth on the throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill. and all the firstborn of beasts, and there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it anymore. That's the kind of language we see in Revelation, used with the tribulation, for instance. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know that how that the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And all these servants shall come down unto me and bow themselves down unto me, saying, Get thee out, and all the people that follow thee. And after that I will go out. And he went from the Pharaoh in great anger. And then the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders be multiplied in the land of Egypt. And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh. And Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of the land. Maybe it's 12. Hold on a second. I got 10 up here too. Oh, okay. It is 12. Sorry. Okay. And then here's where it kind of explains what to do. You want to read this? Because now that we're on the text, may as well let you read.
Yeah. This is Exodus 12, starting with verse 1, right?
Well, let me drop it down in the chat real quick.
Okay.
If you guys want to follow along.
So Exodus 12, verse 1, And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Which again, that kind of points to this is the first of the year. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door post of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden it all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until morning, and that which remaineth of it until morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, with your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord, and the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt.
Mm-hmm. If you don't mind, can I read this unleavened bread portion here?
Yeah, you just tell me when you want me to read, and when you want to read,
we'll
you go
just
for it.
Switch on and off, because this is really what we were leading up to anyway.
Right, and this is where he says, keep this feast throughout generations. So that's important.
And I didn't really want to read these other Torah portions, so I'll just share them. Because what I wanted to read was what we're reading now. So I'll just go ahead and share these and click them. If you guys want to read these on your own. They're still relevant. It's just I wanted to read Exodus today. There we go. Okay, and so we'll be starting with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Exodus 12, verse 14. And this day shall be unto you a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, meaning no work. And in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. So in other words, you're not allowed to do anything but eat. And you're supposed to not be working the 1st and 7th day. Verse 17. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this self same day that I have brought your armies out of the land of Egypt, therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the 1st month, on the 14th day of the month at evening, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. 7 days shall there be, in other words, till the 21st. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Verse 20, ye shall eat nothing leavened, in all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop. So this is what they used as the brush. Can you maybe look that up for me, please? I think it's like a flower plant. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out the door of the house until morning. So you weren't even supposed to be outside during this time, right? So because they weren't wearing the blood, the house was. So if you were still found outside, you could be subject to this plague. Now, how that contrasts with us now today, I would think we wouldn't have to necessarily. It's not our house that necessarily gets saved. It's us that gets saved now, right? So we're sealed individually. So that's kind of one difference I've kind of noticed between the two Exodus.
Okay, lost sound. That means we're probably getting cut off for a moment. Let's see what happens. Let's hope he comes right back on. Lord Jesus, we pray for a clean stream. Abba Father, help Joshua come back live. Amen. Let's see. Let me hang up. I'm going to hang up and call back. All right. Please stand by. Thank you for your patience, you guys.
Hello.
I hear you.
Oh, okay, good.
It went away.
Well,
we don't know what happened.
I don't know where you lost me at. I'll just start back here at 22.
I'd say that, yeah, I'm right about
and
there.
ye shall take a bunch of hyssop.
Sorry, share your screen.
Oh.
And the hyssop is a shrub like related to the mint family or in the mint family, and it has properties as an antiseptic, cough reliever, expectorant, and used in traditional herbal medicine.
Okie dokie.
All right, good to go.
All right. So, let's see, where was I here? Okay,
22.
verse 22. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out of the door of the house until the morning. One comment I was making here was that if you were caught outside the house, you could still be hit with the plague, so you wouldn't want to be caught outside. Some interesting detail there. Verse 23, for the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. Another thing I mentioned was how, this mimics how we're supposed to be covered with the blood of the Lamb ourselves, and in context of the second Passover, or what we consider the rapture, and how the blood of the Lamb fulfills this. So it's food for thought. Verse 24, ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And here's where, you mentioned earlier, do we have to do this, or we have to do that, or so on and so forth. Well, forever is forever. Because, we know that the Old Testament proves the New Testament. So I think if this was only meant to be temporary, it would say until the coming of the Messiah or something like that. But it says here forever. So I think this is something that we should all be doing, Christians and Jews alike. And here in verse 25 it says, and it shall come to pass when ye be come to the land which the Lord will give to you, according to as he had promised, that ye shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? And ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the children bowed the head and worshipped. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. This is, you see how many parts there are to this, because this is the last. I wanted to read a little bit of 10 just because of the locusts, but yeah, you think we can finish the rest of this? Do we have enough time?
We still have 35 minutes, so yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, we be starting right here.
All right, my turn, right?
Yeah.
The 10th plague, death of the firstborn, verse 29. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Do you want me to keep going?
Oh, if you want. I guess that was a short one. You can do this one too, if you want.
The Exodus begins, verse 31. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as ye have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people, that they might send them out of the land in haste, where they said, we be all dead men. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required. And they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men besides children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry, neither had they prepared them for themselves any victual. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years, And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. That is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations.
Somebody was asking here what we're to be doing. And just sharing these stories with our family. It commands us to do so, and other parts here in Exodus to share this with our children and explain, right up here, excuse me if I can't find it immediately. Oh yeah, where it's saying, and you'll observe this thing to do as an ordinance for thee and thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass when they be come to the land of which the Lord will give to you, according to he hath promised, that you shall keep this service. So he's saying, do it now, do it then, and then do it in the future. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, it is a sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our homes, and the people bowed their head and worshipped. So, in other words, we need to remember this. And so just got to tell the stories, and it tells you how to have the feast as well. So just trying to get in line with it and to understand, like, well, what was the reason for this and what was the reason for that, and trying to embody and remember through those acts that you're emulating there. It's trying to relive that experience. And the other part that I felt was very important was where they're ready to leave. They're dressed with their shoes on, their staffs in their hand. They're really ready. Another thing I wanted to touch on was how they made their journey from Ramses to Sukkoth. Well, we know that we're in the time of Nisan, or Aries, which is emblematic of the ram, right? And Sukkoth sounds a lot like Sukkot, which is the Tabernacles feast in the fall. So it seems that even in the beginning, before these folks even knew what was going on, they were already showing the path from spring to fall of the feasts. So it was like a shadow of itself. I just found that very interesting. It jumped out to me there, and I wanted to share that.
I wanted to mention too that I put a link in the chat that this is just one guy's way of doing, but it's not his way of doing it. He's scripturally the way of celebrating the Passover. So it's not like his way. But he says that he's, you can take it or leave it if you don't think he's an expert, but he covers the Passover very well in one of his videos. And he put a PDF up of showing how you can celebrate the Passover, which is straight from the scripture. So really you could just get that information from reading Exodus, but he has a nice PDF he put together for people.
Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to read, but there are some of those details. Like, I've seen a lot of graphics and how-tos and things like that too. And one of the things that normally gets left out of there is being ready to leave. So even though it's nice to kind of get it packaged in a way, I guess, to be able to understand it better, I think we should definitely still read this, because there's a lot of details in it that maybe get lost otherwise. But, and the last one, incidentally, I'll go ahead and read it. The instructions for Passover. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is an ordinance for the Passover. There shall be no stranger eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and an hired servant shall not eat thereof. In one house shall it be eaten. There shalt not carry forth out aught. Get tongue-tied so much reading the Old Testament, especially. aught of the flesh abroad out of the house, neither shall ye break a bone thereof. So again, that's that reference not to break the bone of the lamb. And this ties into when Christ was crucified, he didn't have any bones broken either. So he fulfilled the Passover lamb portion of this. Verse 37 or 47 rather. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it, and when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, and no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. So, again, there's some details in here that just get missed. I mean, I know a lot of the stuff doesn't necessarily apply to us modern day, because we don't have like servants and stuff, and things of that nature. But it's still worth reading, in my opinion, and it's something we should read with our kids, I think. So if they're wanting you to read them a book or something at night, well, read them the stories that like the Passover and stuff. Again, we've talked about this in the past with like the mark of the beast and how we're supposed to bind the commandments to our. Can you help me there, Aaron? Was it our right hand and between our eyes? Maybe something that mentions in Deuteronomy.
I could try to find it.
And then also to our doors. So not only would they be anointing their door posts and the lintel with the lamb's blood, but you would also have the commandments on your posts. And so this was meant to, I think sometimes they even kiss them before they enter the house. But this was to keep them always mindful of the commandments and to always be mindful of their own laws, because theirs were different from the rest of the world. So it's just, to always be, and honestly, I think this is where the spare the rod you ruin the child, it comes from. It doesn't mean to spank them. It means that if you don't share these stories with them and you don't share the laws with them, then they'll grow up without them in their head. And then they become spoiled in that way. So I think that when it's telling us over and over to share these things with our children, it's for those reasons, because it's kind of like, a way to keep it echoing throughout the past and into the future. So that in that day when the second Exodus occurs, which is supposed to be a fulfillment of the fall feasts, which again, we kind of see a shadowing of that, where it talks about Sukkoth, right. So if you go and look at the Feast of Tabernacles, for instance, you'll see that it's called Sukkot, which means booth, referring to like a outdoor shelter made of sticks. So again, I just think that right there is really interesting. And I wanted to read a little bit of 10 if we had any time. Okay. And won't read all this. And this last, there was one more actually before the firstborn. It was the darkness. I missed that one. So this would have been the 8th plague. Okay. And the Lord said unto Moses, go in unto Pharaoh, guys, I forgot to share it. Okay. And the Lord said unto Moses, go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show thee my signs before them, and that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and thy son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt. So again, there's this tell your sons and their sons' sons kind of thing. And my signs which I have done among them, which ye may know how that I am the Lord. In other words, he doesn't want us to forget him. Like it says in Hosea 4:6, my people perish for lack of knowledge. It makes a further comparison, says, if my people forget me, then I'll forget them. Verse 3, Moses and Aaron came unto the Pharaoh and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, How long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring the locusts unto thy coasts, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth. And they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field. And they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day. And he turned himself and went and out from Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's servants said unto him, How long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knoweth thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? And Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh, and he said unto them, Go, serve the Lord your God. But who are they that shall let go? But who are they that shall go, rather? And Moses said, We will go with our young and our old, and with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds we will go, for we must hold a feast unto the Lord. So Karen, I think, is that what it is? Yeah, she was asking like who was with the animals. So here it's saying that they're going to leave with them. So I don't know who, there must have not been anybody out there with the animals while the destroyer was going over, but they did have intention of leaving with them, it says here. And it was with them and the mixed multitude, the animals did accompany them. Verse 10, And he said unto them, Let the Lord be so with you, as I will let you go and your little ones. Look to it, for evil is before you. Not so, now go ye that are men, and serve the Lord, for that ye did desire, and were driven out from the Pharaoh's presence. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up upon the land of Egypt, and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail had left. And Moses stretched forth his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. That's really interesting because in Revelation chapter 9, and I think maybe also 14, it talks about the angel from the east coming and sealing the servants of God, and giving instruction to the king of the locusts that he is not to harm those with the seal of God on their foreheads, and they're only allowed to plague those with the mark of the beast. So I think this is really interesting that that it comes from the east wind here. So let's continue here, verse 14. And the locust went up over all the land of Egypt, and rested in the coasts of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. For they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened, and they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left, and there remained not any green thing in the trees. Again, in that Revelation verse 9, or chapter 9 rather, they're told they're not allowed to harm any green thing or any tree or those with the seal of God in their heads. So again, we see that similar language here. Or in the herbs of the field through all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God, that he may take away from me this death only. And he went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord, and the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts, and cast them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the coasts of Egypt, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, so that he would not let the children of Israel go. So not only do we see the east wind that brings the locusts, but then we see the west wind that takes the locusts away and casts them into the Red Sea. So strong west wind. And another thing is that we read about the second Exodus in Isaiah 11, how his people will once again go dry shod over the river Euphrates. So we're talking about a strong wind right here, helping them cross the Red Sea. But we see in the second Exodus that he smites the Euphrates River into 7 streams so they can walk across dry shod. So another wind. Now, one thing I also found interesting is that when we were going through this, the language that it's using, the way it's written, it sounds like a lot like Revelations, like nothing like it before, like the tribulation, for instance. So it's almost as if Revelation's mirroring the plagues in a way that come upon the land, and then the second Exodus, which is our harpazo, our harvesting of the first fruits during the time that you would harvest the first fruits, which is the barley. So it's very, very interesting to me to see so many similarities. Now, that's not to say that it will be in the spring, but because the fall feasts are the ones that are supposed to be fulfilled in that case, which is where we see the Judgment Day, Yom Kippur, for instance. So, and then of course Jeremiah asks, it's summer is over and have I been saved? Again, kind of pointing to those fall feasts. But I still think it's interesting to look at the spring feasts and how they're similar in some ways, and kind of like an alpha omega kind of component there. It's like they complement each other. They may not be exactly alike, but they kind of rhyme or have a complementary relationship. So anyway, thank you so much, Aaron.
Wow,
we left out the 9th plague of darkness. I didn't know if we'd have enough time to finish, but
yeah, go ahead and read it.
Okay, well, let's read this one. The 9th plague, darkness. So this would be the last one before the firstborn. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, and there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. Now, I think this is a really interesting point to raise because it's so dark that you could feel it. Can you even imagine a darkness like that? Verse 22, and Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all of the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind. For thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God. And we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. But sorry, this is just so difficult to read. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more, for in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, thou hast spoken well, I will see thy face no more. So I find it interesting that the very last thing that the Pharaoh says to him is, get out of here, because if I see you again, I'm going to kill you, is basically what he's telling him. And then that's the very last thing he says to him. Basically, he's cursing him in that sense. And the very next thing we see is, Moses just asked for all this stuff. He's like, here are the terms. We want to leave. Let us take our animals, stuff to do burnt offerings, so on and so forth. And then, as he's leaving, the Lord's like, by the way, I got one more plague. So I just think it's interesting that, it makes me wonder, did he already have this planned out? Had Pharaoh not said that, would he have done this? I don't know. Just makes, because we were on the heels of the plague of darkness, which is kind of where he's like, okay, we're done. Go ahead and get out of here. And he's like, well, just to make sure, here's one more plague. So I just think it's really interesting. And another thing, the reason we're not supposed to have the yeast in the bread and stuff is because pride is supposed to be puffed up, much like Pharaoh in this story, because as we read over and over, his heart was hardened. He wasn't going to let him go, etc. Because mind you, this was a big labor force of his too, one that he was abusing additionally. And so his pride was very much puffed up. And so again, to not have that yeast, it's like you're not partaking of this pride, to be the very opposite of it. So the 7 days that they're fleeing from Pharaoh, they didn't have leaven, but also that none of that pride. So, and again, because if we don't try to do these things, then we kind of lose them over time, because then if we were to teach our children about it and didn't do it exactly the way we were supposed to, then they're not going to teach their children the proper way either, So I can definitely understand the importance of teaching it to the children. But that is we finally finished the Exodus story in regards to the Passover.
Yeah, and I agree. We should definitely tell our children, because it is so important to Jesus on the cross. So obviously the correlations are fulfilling prophecy. So thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for reviewing that with us. I think it's wonderful, because it's that time of year and we can review this. And like I said, there's a link in the Discord also, but I put it in the chat somewhere up there with the how you can celebrate Passover, and it's not complicated at all. Any of us could do it.
Yeah, and this darkness plague we just read about, remember it said it was felt, and we get that in, what is it, Luke, or I can't remember which book it is, but there's the one prophecy of foretelling, it's Joel rather, about the darkness that comes before. So that might be another reference to that. And it didn't really go over it so much in detail, but it said that only the Hebrews had light in their dwelling. So some of the research I had done on that prior suggested that if somebody had a candle or something lit, it didn't actually put off any light because the darkness was so thick. And they said it was a supernatural type of darkness. So I just thought that was really interesting. I just wanted to share that extra detail. Forgot to mention it.
I was trying to think of, it must be antimatter.
Yeah, like some type of anti-light. But that's the story that we're going through right now, folks. So remember, between now and Pentecost, which is essentially summer solstice, summertime, it would be the counting of the Omer. So when we can reconvene next weekend, we'll be a week into it. That's past the first 7 days. This is when you could resume eating yeast. So that seems to indicate that after 7 days of fleeing, they had gotten to a point where they could at least take the kneading troughs off their back and start making bread again, those types of things. So it's just, again, to kind of emphasize that as we go through the week, try and avoid bread with leaven in it. And just to kind of put yourself in that position, imagine that you did leave last night or tonight and you're on the run. Are you going to be able to have amenities like making coffee or whatever, So the idea is to try and impress upon us, leaving the luxuries behind, kind of like Lot and Abraham did, Moses and all the Hebrews did. We too have to be ready to leave and not have these comforts, being a snare to us. So just something to keep in mind. So this is meant to impress it upon us. So again, not trying to like damn people, just want you to appreciate it is all.
Well, we appreciate all the work you do and the thought you put into it. And did you want me to pray tonight?
Yes, please.
All right, well, let's close out in prayer. Abba, Father, thank you for Joshua and for this channel and ability to try to reach a few people or a lot of people, however it is in your will to be done, but that we would reach them with your word and with your truth and with your wisdom. And we are so grateful, Yahusha or Yeshua, however anyone wants to say it, that, the Hebrew version, not just saying that that's how people want to say it, but yes, the Yahusha, Yeshua, we are grateful for your salvation and death on the cross to cover our sins fully in a final Passover. And let us remember the Passover for generations to come, as the Bible has told us to do. And let us tell our children the stories of Scripture on a regular basis. And I pray that I would be better at that. And if anyone else is praying for them to be better at that or how to celebrate the Passover, I pray for that knowledge and wisdom to come to us all and to motivate us to do that more frequently and better, and to learn the feast days and to share that with each other and prepare these things together, that not one of us is any better than the other. And we thank you for this time together. We love you first. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach of Nazareth, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will play out a song to finish us off, and I'll say goodnight to you all, and go in peace.
Yeah, thank you for salvation. Exactly. That's the definition of the name. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Meow.
Ow.
I ran from your light, called me to mercy, but fear said to I ran for my life, sailed across the ocean, to my surprise, there's no height I could ascend to, depth I could descend, even there your love pursues me, and you have searched me and you know me, even still you chose me, so I'm running back to you. joyfully sings. There's no height I could ascend to, depth I could descend, even there your love pursues me. And you have searched me and you know me, even still you chose me, so I'm running back to you. For the joy set before you, you saved a wretch like me. For the joy set before me, I'll live as an offering. 'Cause there's no height I could ascend to, depth I could descend.